The war in Ukraine has changed the world. And now we need to think about where this world is moving to, together. That's why MIM Business School is launching the nationwide educational project ReInforceUA, where the world's greatest minds will share their ideas and insights. And you will get their experience, change your perspective, and discover what changes should the business be ready for, before and after the victory. Every week on ReInforceUA.com.
Dear colleagues, friends, both in Ukraine and all over the world, I'm Vyacheslav Pokatilo, and on behalf of MIM Kyiv Business School, welcome you on ReInforceUA project that was designed to inspire and empower Ukrainian business community in this difficult world. For this purpose, we invited the most renowned thinkers and thinkers in the management in other spheres to share their views and opinions about the subject, which is currently on the table of various people worldwide. The project became possible due to the support of Bogdan Havrilshin Family Foundations and three associations of business education, AACSB, AMBA, and EFMD. We also got a support from 50 Thinkers organization. We are very grateful for everybody who made donation on our site and remind that all the money collected will be directed to support Ukrainian women who are temporarily displaced and want to start their own businesses. Before I shall give the floor to our honorable guest today, I'd like to remind you that lectures are recorded and they are online, and therefore you will be able at the end to ask questions to our guest. For this purpose, I kindly ask you to use Q&A button rather than chat, but probably you will need to use chat during the lecture as well. And now I have an honor to introduce you Dr. Alex Osterwalder. Probably he don't need any big introduction because he is well known due to his books published in co-authorship with Yves Pigneur, and were very practical tools, business model canvas, value proposition canvas, and business portfolio map were introduced, and actually these practical tools changed the manner how many people started to make business worldwide. He is a renowned intellectual and published books which I already mentioned, and today Dr. Osterwalder will be with us during this time, and I'm very pleased to give him the floor. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome in our project.
Thank you. Real pleasure and honor to be here. And I hope I can give the business community some ideas around innovation. So what I'm going to talk about today is, sounds like a very arrogant title, but it's not. I'm going to just throw up some slides here. It's what we call building an invincible company. And what I mean with that is companies that can constantly innovate. And we wrote about this together with one of my colleagues, Tendai Wiki. And I'm going to show you how you can ask yourself for your businesses if you are ready to innovate, able to innovate today. So what I'm going to look at is a couple of things here. Let me get out of the way. Three things. First, just a little bit of framing around innovation. Then we're going to look at portfolios of projects. So looking at your innovation projects and seeing if they're good enough. Then the different types of innovation programs that you might launch, and then the whole topic of how to build an innovation culture. So these are quite a lot of things. So I will only be able to scratch on the surface, but I want to give you some very practical ways of asking yourself if you are able and ready to innovate. And I actually want to start with a question. So I want you all to get out your mobile phones and participate. I want to ask you, how good do you think you are today at innovation? How innovation ready are you? Do you think you're good at innovation, or do you think you still have a lot to learn? So the way I call this is innovation maturity. how high is your innovation maturity? If you give yourself a 1, then you're a beginner for the topic of innovation. And if you give yourself a score of 10, then you are so good at innovation that you should probably be in our next book. So to get us to start, to participate, I want you to go to either use the phone and the camera with the QR code or go to the website menti.com and enter 87570235. So you can use either. I am going to now switch actually from my slides to Menti. Let's see if I can make that happen. Whoops. Never goes as seamless as I thought, but here we go. Okay. So we got a couple of you already that are in. I need, of course, a couple of you more. So again, either it's menti.com 87570235, or you use your phone and the QR code. You can just use the camera and hold it up and it will go to the page and you can start. And while you're getting in, I'm just going to ask you, just see how mature companies think they are, people who are here in the room. How good do you think you are at innovation? Are you on the very right-hand side? That means you'd be so good that my team and I at Strategizer could still learn from you, or you're more on the left-hand side.
We seem to have some technical problems. I'm sure that it'll take just 1 minute. Therefore, everybody, please be patient. The Mentimeter is a different platform, but those who are actually in Mentimeter site, please continue answering questions. They will have enough information to start discussing in a minute. Actually, I was preparing to ask questions to Dr. Osterwalder, but I was not preparing to substitute him. Okay, we have it. We have you back. Thank you. It was a technical issue.
Network problems, technical issues. I'm back. So let's continue. So how do you actually know if your company is ready to innovate or not? And mostly people tell us, oh, we're actually very good at innovation. We have a large budget. So people are very confident that they know how to innovate. But when we look a little bit closer, we can actually see that they're not always very ready. So we're going to look at 3 areas. The first one is the portfolio of innovation projects that you have. If you say you're innovative, you probably have some results. You have some real projects and you need to be able to show something. So we're going to look at the portfolio of projects, and we're going to evaluate that. The second one we're going to evaluate is looking at all of the different programs that you put in place, for example, to create an innovation culture, for example, an incubator or an accelerator, things that you put in place that you hope will create innovation, all of your programs. So I'm going to show you how to assess your innovation programs. And then the third one, I want you to look at your innovation culture. And what that means is looking at your company and asking yourself, how innovative are we today? How good are we at innovating in terms of culture, the culture you have at your company? So we're going to look at these three things, and I'm going to help you understand how to assess this. So let's go through each one. Now, on the right-hand side, I'm going to describe where you should be, where a strong innovation company is. And then I'm going to show you where many companies actually are, because I work with my team with companies from around the world, and often they're here and not here. We want to be here, but often they're over here. So what I'm going to do is quickly go through this and show you where would you want to be if you had a strong portfolio of projects. It means you're constantly reinventing your business, you're rethinking the business model, you're creating new revenue streams, you're creating new products, and it's happening all the time, every year, without you having to redo it. That's what a great company should be able to do. Most companies actually are more here. They're becoming, what I like to say, they become irrelevant efficiently. What does that mean? They're looking at their business model and they're improving it all the time. You know, better processes, making things better, but the business model itself and the products are expiring. The customers are not very interested anymore, or the margins are shrinking. So that's what we call, if you're just improving that, you're becoming irrelevant efficiently because you're only improving a dying business model. You can't do that. You have to already think ahead of where the world is going. So that's the whole topic here, right? We want to look ahead. Now, if we look at our innovation programs, all of the programs that you're putting in place, you need to have tangible results. In general, that would be financial results, new growth engines. It could also be sustainability results if you want to make your business greener, okay? So your programs would actually have to produce results. That sounds silly that I'm saying that, but I've seen a lot of innovation programs that do not produce results. We call that innovation theater. A lot of activity, a lot of innovation activity, but few tangible results. So on the left-hand side, we have, you know, all of these incubators, these accelerators, these hackathons, the idea competitions. That is generally a lot of activity, but very little results. And that sounds crazy, but still in a lot of companies, we have activities in innovation without the results. So we need to measure the results of our programs. Now let's look at the culture. In a culture where innovation can flourish, you have enablers of innovation. So when somebody has a project, they're going to get a lot of help to innovate. They're not going to face resistance, but they're going to face support. The reality of most innovation teams, big or small, in a company, is that they face a lot of blockers. And I'll tell you why, because the world has the business world has two different areas. One is managing the existing, and the other one is inventing the future. And when you manage the existing, you work very different, right? You have to deliver on plan, you have to deliver on time. That's not how innovation works. So often these two cultures clash. Okay, so now you can see on the right-hand side, I'm showing you how you would want to be, okay? Here, this is how we want to be across these three areas, portfolio, programs, and culture. But the reality is that many companies are on the left-hand side. So remember the scale I gave you from 1 to 10? Very few companies are actually on this side. So let's have a deeper look at these three areas. And I'm going to go into portfolio first. So what do I mean with that? We're going to look at how a leader, a CEO, and the senior executive team, how they manage their company, I think the chat window is open. So I want you to answer in chat. I will only be able to read the English ones, but that's okay. I want you to judge if Steve Ballmer, who used to be CEO of Microsoft from the year 2000 to the year 2014, if you believe he was a great CEO. So I want you to type in the chat window if you think Steve Ballmer was a great CEO at Microsoft. So he was CEO after Bill Gates. Type yes, Steve Ballmer was a great CEO. If you think he was a terrible CEO, you can type no, Steve Ballmer was a terrible CEO. And we can already see that's already interesting. We have a bit of a mix in the chat window, right? Some of you say yes, some of you say no. Now, that's interesting because this was a little bit of a trick question. You could say he was good, depending on the perspective you take, or you could say he was bad, again, depending on the perspective you take. So I'm going to give you a quote from my friend Steve Blank, who I like to call the father of modern entrepreneurship. Steve Blank invented the whole lean startup methodology, and he likes to say, let me get out of the way here, he likes to say that visionary CEOs are not just great at assuring world-class execution of a proven, tested and successful and proven business model, they're also world-class innovators, product and business model centric. So while this is execution, running the business, this here is the innovation and invention of new business models, coming up with new products, new services, new business models. Now, let's look at Ballmer and let's look at his track record. And what I'm going to look at is this continuum that goes from what I call exploit and explore. What do I mean with that? Exploit is running the business, okay, managing the existing business, and explore is coming up with new products, new value propositions, new business models. And here is actually sustaining innovation, improving the existing. Here it's things like new products, new value propositions, and here it's things like new business models. Okay, let's look at the track record of Steve Ballmer. So he was actually very good at improving the existing business. When he took over from Bill Gates, he was scaling the Windows and the Office empire. Okay, so made more and more and more business, grew it, the revenues grew substantially. Now let's look at sustaining innovation. Well, when it comes to search, who won the whole battle around search? Google. So first thing that didn't really work out. If you take digital communications, lost to Zoom, this platform here, right? So then they tried something with Yammer, didn't work either. So you could say in both cases of innovation, sustaining innovation, new products, Steve Ballmer missed out. Okay, now let's look at Skype. They acquired Skype, didn't work out, right? So still no victory when it comes to innovation. What about transformative innovation? So new business models. Was Steve Ballmer good there? Okay, well, what about smartphones? They lost against Apple. Famously, right? Apple launched the iPhone in 2007. So no victory, big loss. Then they acquired Nokia. Didn't really work out. So big loss. What about other areas? The cloud. Well, they lost to Amazon. So then they launched Azure from 2010 to 2014. Azure stayed very small. So again, lost. So now if you look at everything that Steve Ballmer did in the innovation space over here, not very good, but very, very good at growing the business. And this is what's really important to understand. most companies that I see from the inside, they're very good at running the business and scaling an own business model. And they're not so good at inventing the future. Why is that? Because they apply the rules from exploitation, from running the business, to innovation. And that's exactly what Steve Ballmer did. He focused really on running the business. Now, what happened afterwards? Who took over? Anybody remember? It was Satya Nadella who took over, and credit to Steve Ballmer, he put Satya Nadella in place. So Satya Nadella took over in 2014, and now we can say, okay, efficiency innovation, Windows. Actually, they turned it into an open cloud platform. Azure, when Satya Nadella took over, became such a strong transformative innovation that it grew and became part of their core business. So now they can improve it. Now, what else happened? The phone business, what did Satya Nadella do there? He just divested Nokia because that wasn't somewhere to go in. But then they started investing in new innovations like the HoloLens. They invested in acquiring LinkedIn and integrated that into their platform. They invested in GitHub, which is an open source software platform. So you can see the transformation towards becoming way more open is happening. And if you take some of the services on top of Azure, Azure is the cloud platform of Microsoft, they added new services. So you can see that in every area, and then the last one you might remember from the press, they acquired Activision Blizzard, so they're investing even more in gaming. You can see that the portfolio of innovation projects is blossoming. So what do we see here? We had a CEO who was very good at running the business, Steve Ballmer, who grew the business more and more, but completely missed out on all innovations. That's the type of CEO that used to succeed. But today, if you're a leader or a leadership team in a company, you have to look at the future and you have to take the future seriously. So this is the kind of portfolio that you want: efficiency innovation, sustaining innovation, and transformative innovation. So that's Microsoft. Now let's look at how a company has concretely managed a portfolio. And I'll take a big one first, and then I'll take a very small one, because I'm assuming we have a big mix of different types of companies here. So I'll show a big business first so we can understand, and then I'll show you a small business if you're in that case, okay? And what I want to show is how this gentleman here, Uwe Kirchner, how he created the Bosch Accelerator program and how they were able to succeed, because they managed their portfolio of projects in a very specific way. And I'm actually going to show a video. So I hope this works with the translation and with the sound. I'm going to show a video of Uwe asking you a question, and you can type the answer of the question into the chat window, okay? So let's watch the video with Uwe, and I'm going to get out of the way, and then he's going to ask you a question before we see his explanation.
Hi there, my name is Uwe Kirchner. I'm from Bosch Management Consulting. I'm partner for Business Model Innovation, and it's a pleasure to be the Invincible Company of the Month. What you see here is Bosch's research center in Renningen near Stuttgart. It represents Bosch's history, present, and certainly also the future. Traditionally, our organization has been very successful in development of new technologies and new products. And certainly, this will also remain so in the future. In the year 2015, something very important happened. Our board of management decided to set up a competence center for business model innovation. The challenge was clear. We had to test many innovation ideas in a fast and capital efficient way. We wanted to find the very few innovation projects which have the potential to scale. Now the question to you, in order to reach that number of 19 innovation projects successfully exiting our Bosch Accelerator program, how many projects entered the validation phase? 19 innovation projects, 43, 108, 214 or even 926? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so the question to you was to get 19 winners, how many projects do you think they had to invest in? So I see a lot of you saying 926, some of you saying 19. Okay, 19 means you have to be able to pick the winners. Okay, some of you are saying, okay, a lot of E's. Okay, we're navigating between 19 and 926. You're taking the extremes. Okay, so the answer is actually 214 that they invested in. What I do agree with the participants here who said 926, actually it would be better to invest in more. And we'll see the reason why, because we need small investments first. This also is their time. So 120,000 euros sounds like a lot, but it's also the time of the people, so the salaries of the teams. But what's more important than the number is how they actually did it. So what I'm going to show you now is Uwe explaining how they did it. And this, of course, is very big because Bosch is a big company. But you will see that in a small company, I'll show you an example afterwards, it's the same thing on a smaller scale, okay? Same thing on a smaller scale. So let's listen to Uwe to understand how they did this, because the how is most important here.
Yes, you're right. 214 innovation projects entered our validation engine, our Bosch Accelerator program. You've probably read the book, right? Let me give you some additional information around these 214 innovation projects which entered our Bosch Accelerator program. Phase 1 has an average duration of 3 months, including prep time. The average budget is 120,000 euros per team, and this already includes the personnel costs. After a very short period of time, and as I said, 3 months, we are able to successfully terminate 65% of all innovation projects. The remaining projects, in numbers 74, continued their journey in phase 2 of our program. The average team has a budget of 300,000 euros. And again, this includes, on one hand side, the personnel costs, but also the costs for the development and iteration of the MVP. And again, at the end of phase 2, a high number of innovation projects can be successfully terminated. We believe it's very important to ask the teams themselves whether they believe they're a go or no go at the end of phase 1 and also at the end of phase 2 of the program, because this really brings responsibility to teams, and this also certainly drives cultural change in an organization. The go criteria, which we derive out of most recent methods and tools, are the foundation for a proper decision whether a team should stop or continue their journey. The success rate of the Bosch Accelerator program is around 10%, meaning that only 10% of the innovation projects are successfully exiting our Bosch Accelerator program. Now, you might argue that's a low number. I would disagree, because in explorative and adjacent innovations, you need to accept that the success rate is reasonably low. The purpose of the Bosch Accelerator.
Okay, so let me, go into the image here. Now, it's very important that you understand the how here. And again, this is a big company, so I'll show you how this applies to smaller companies. So they invested over 3 years in 214 teams, and they gave them 3 months and mainly time, right? This was not actually out of the pocket money, it was time. What did these teams have to do? They had to go to talk to customers, right? So first thing they did was talking to customers. Whoops, this is a little person, this is a little customer. They talked to customer to understand, does the customer actually have that problem? And only if they could prove that customers had that problem, would they get follow-up money here in phase 2. So how many teams did they eliminate, successfully retire, successfully terminate? 65% of projects were terminated. And that's okay, because they didn't find anything, wasn't too expensive. Then The same thing happens here for the 19 that go to the end, 74% were terminated. So the success rate is, you could say, only in quotes, 10%. But that's exactly how innovation works. Only 1 out of 10, or I'd say like more actually, generally 1 out of 100, but here we can argue 10% of these here are real successes. So this is very different from a project like building a new factory, which is an execution project. There you know it's going to work. In innovation, you don't know it's going to work. Okay, so that was a big company. Let me make this very tangible for a smaller company. So I'm going to take a Swiss company that makes, or traditionally made, here, steam irons, okay, for households. So very, very high-end steam irons that they export from around the world. Very small company. It's actually family-owned by Mike and Julie, who took over from their father, Jean. And they asked themselves, what kind of innovation could we invest in? And they said, well, we're very good at steam irons. What if we made a handheld steamer called the Iggy? Okay. Now, here's a mistake they made. They first built the product, and then they tried to figure out the right business model. But they did realize we don't really know what the business model of the Iggy is. Why is that? Because this Iggy could steam your suit. If you wear suits, it would take out the wrinkles, or a shirt. But it would also disinfect furniture, disinfect clothes. Seems to be pretty handy, you know, in an age where we have pandemics. So what they said is, we actually don't know, if we take this idea of a portfolio, what kind of business could this become? Is this going to be a steamer for the hospitality industry, for hotels, so they can steam the rooms after a guest leaves? Could this become something for hospitals? Because obviously in a hospital, you need to disinfect. Or could this be something for the mass market? Because it's not just about ironing, it's also about disinfecting, you know, baby stuff, or disinfecting your home in general. So they said, we're also going to, like Bosch, create a portfolio, but on a smaller scale. So they started with 14 ideas. 14 ideas of how to commercialize, how to go to market with the Iggy. And they said, okay, from these 14 ideas, let's pick 3, and 3 of those we're going to test. Just like we've seen with Bosch, where 214 teams went to test. Here, these were 3 teams, and the 3 teams, the people were spending maybe 20% to 40% of their time. So it wasn't a full-time team because the company's too small, but they spent time on innovation. And from that, they learned that the business model that they would execute was a handheld steamer for the mass market, where they would not market the ironing of shirts, but they would actually push the whole health aspects, that you can eliminate bacteria with this steamer. So you can see that what they launched here was the result of a lot of testing, not testing of the technology actually worked, but testing of the business model. And that's what innovation is about. Innovation is not about technology. Innovation is not about proving you can build something. Innovation is about testing and adapting an idea, until customers care, because you're creating value for them, and the business model can scale profitably. So I want to give you a smaller company example, even though personally I work with a lot of large companies. Okay, that's for innovation portfolio. Now, let's look at the whole idea of innovation programs. And I like to quote my friend Rita McGrath here, who's from Columbia Business School. She likes to talk about innovation theater. What is innovation theater? It's an excessive focus on ideas, spending a lot of time on ideation and how important it is our ideas. Ideas are not important in innovation. What's hard in innovation is adapting the idea until it creates value, okay? Until the business model can work. So what I want to do here is have a little bit of fun and ask all of you what kind of examples of innovation theater have you invested in, have you done in your company? So innovation theater are innovation activities that don't actually really lead to results. And, you know, the cliche example is the Silicon Valley ping pong table, right? You buy ping pong tables, you buy these comfortable seats and furniture. Of course, in the real world, it's a little bit different. So I want us to go to Menti again. So back to Menti, so you don't just listen to me, but you also participate. You can use the barcode, or you can switch with me, and we're going to see the barcode again. So I'm going to go over here, and you have a series of choices. The first one is standalone hackathons. That means you're doing an event where people come, and for 1 or 2 days, they come up with a solution. If those are standalone, they're not going to lead to results. The second one here you can see are idea competitions, when people are allowed to select the best ideas. Oops, I think I am not connected, so give me 1 second. I just realized that because my computer bombed before, I need to actually do something here in order for us to reconnect. So I think this is not working. This is where technology falls apart. I apologize. Gonna get this to work again, I hope. Let's see. Testing real-time technology. Okay, here we go. So now you should be able to log on to the multiple choice and go to menti.com and use the code 87570235. Okay, so technology has been a little bit of an obstacle today, but we are getting some people to participate, right? So standalone hackathons, idea competitions, Silicon Valley tour means you go and visit startups in Berlin, in Silicon Valley, in London, right? You go to these innovation centers and you go and look at startup companies, standalone incubators, accelerators that don't have follow-up, where the ideas go and die, or creativity training. It's the worst, because creativity is actually not the most important thing in innovation. It's testing and adapting ideas until they work. So you can already see a group of people here, you know, we all, including myself, we've all been part of investing in activities that don't lead to real results, right? Activities that don't lead to real results. But we need to stop that, because now innovation is in a better space. We now actually know how to do innovation. So let me show you what we use when we go and talk to a company. We ask them to take all of their innovation activities and put them on 2 axes. One is value creation. Is there a real monetary outcome? That's high value creation, could also be sustainability or impact, or is there a small value creation? And then the bottom axis is cultural change. Does it transform the company culture? If your program doesn't transform your company culture in terms of making it more innovative, then it's on the left-hand side. And if it does, it really changes the leadership, the teams, etc., then it's on the right-hand side. So what we do is classify these. Innovation theater is when there's little value created and little change of the innovation of the culture of a company. Value engines are when you actually create results, but it won't change the company culture. So it's good, it creates results, but it's not very sustainable. And then down here, you have culture builders. They do transform the culture, but they don't necessarily create results. And what you really want is that all the activities that you do, they lead to this. They do help change the culture here and produce results. So what you do, or what we do when we go into a company, is we ask them, show us all of your innovation activities. I'm taking a real case here. This is a food company, and they have a series of different activities. They have an innovation funder, they have a technology council, they have tons of different things. And we ask them to put these activities into this 2x2. So all of a sudden they can see, oh, actually we have some activities that are not very good. Ideation platform. It doesn't produce results and it doesn't change the culture. So the things that are down here, they're not very good, right? Sometimes they can help support something, but generally not so good. The things up here, pretty good. So what's the next thing we do with them? We say, okay, which changes do you want to make your activities better? And we ask them, we take the 4 actions framework here from the Blue Ocean strategy book. We ask them, which activities do you want to eliminate? Which activities do you want to reduce? So you take away some funding maybe. Which activities do you want to improve? You're going to give more funding or you're going to make them stronger. And which completely new activities do you want to create? So we ask them to do that. They take all of these activities that they're doing today, and then they start saying which ones they take away. So you can already see they eliminated the technology lab, they eliminated the ideation platform, they eliminated the innovation steering team, and they did here improve some of the stuff they had. In this case, they didn't. So here you can say improve, and here you can see eliminate. In this case, they didn't create any new activities yet. But what it allows them to do is to move from innovation theater to real impactful innovation, okay? Extremely important. Now, last piece I want to look at together with you, and I'm just going to brush at this a little bit, is culture. How do you create an innovation culture? And one of my favorite companies is Logitech and their CEO, Bracken Darrell. Turns out I played basketball with him 2 weeks ago and I hurt myself, but really, really amazing guy. And he really understands innovation, so much so that he understands if the CEO does not spend time on innovation, it's not going to happen. So he spends 40 to 60% of his time on innovation. So question to you, and we're going to do this last participation. Where does innovation leadership sit in your company's organizational chart? Does it sit at the very top? So with the CEO, and that means the CEO spends a lot of time on innovation. Does it sit with the second level, the C-suite, the chief marketing officer, and so that they support them? Does it sit with the senior vice president, the third level, or if you're a very large company, you'll have another level, vice president. In most companies that are not so big, you won't have so many levels. But I want to just quickly see. We're going to do this together, where it actually sits in your company. So we're going to go back to Menti and just have a quick look. I'll go over here and kind of quick look. Hopefully we can do this together. Good. And you tell me, where does innovation sit? And that means the person needs to spend more than 75% of their time on innovation. Okay, if you put the CEO spends more than 75% of their time on innovation. Okay, so that's already pretty good, right? So it's prominent. That means you have somebody in the top leadership that spends 75% of their time on innovation. What we see in most companies, it's maximum at the senior vice president level. So it's already pretty good. But when it's in the green one, lower, then it's very bad, because that means innovation has no power. It's not important. So let's have a look how this is done in the best companies. So I'm going to show one more video. I'm going to show this video because this is a CEO who I admire, Hubert Joly. He did the turnaround of Best Buy. Best Buy is an American retailer with 100,000 employees, and he learned something about innovation. What he actually learned, he made a big mistake. He thought that the organization that is running the business would be able to innovate. And he realized that's not possible. It's not possible that people who are doing execution every day, they're running the supply chain, they're running the factories. It's very hard to innovate. So let's listen to what Hubert Joly actually learned and how he changed that.
One of the mistakes I made for a while was I was expecting that the organization that's in charge of running the business would be able to innovate. And here's the scoop. If you're running a $50 billion company, 100,000 people, there's a promotion every month, there's no capacity. So a breakthrough moment was when we established the Strategic Growth Office. About 50 people, led by Corey Barry, who later on became my successor. So really staffed with top-notch people. 100% dedicated to identifying which opportunities, prototyping, piloting, testing, and then looking at scaling.
Okay, so what you can see here is that in their case, you had a CEO who first did not understand innovation, Hubert Joly, but as soon as he understood it, he put in place a chief financial and strategic transformation officer who afterwards actually became his successor. So it's very rare that somebody who is tasked with innovation becomes the CEO, but it's going to be more and more common. It's going to be less and less common that the chief operating officer becomes the CEO. It's going to be more and more common that the growth officer becomes the CEO. Now, let me finish simply with showing you 3 questions that you need to ask to evaluate your innovation culture. The first one is, how much time does your leadership spend on innovation? And I like to say, if it's not 40% of their time, innovation will not happen. The second one is, where does innovation sit in the org chart? If innovation is not at the very top, so either with the CEO or with a direct report, innovation will not happen. And then to go very back to the innovation culture or practice, the ability to eliminate, reduce projects. So if you're not able, remember, Uwe said successfully retire 9 out of 10 projects, you're not going to get innovation. So you need to be able to successfully retire 9 out of 10 projects. So that's what I call going from innovation theater to growth engine. You can read more about this. We have a paper that you can download for free on the internet, strategize.com/playbook. And with that, I think we do have some time for questions. So sorry and apologies for the technical issues that was on the Swiss end. That was my little challenge. But with that, I think, if we do have time for questions, I think that would be great.
Thank you very much, Dr. Osterwalder. We have some questions from the audience, and probably first to address them. Let me quickly somehow to make them in common, because we have some 2 questions from different people asking about your opinion about what kind of innovation and what kind of structure and what kind of approach could you advise to Ukrainians? We have in current situation quite hard time, crisis, the war actually in certain parts of Ukraine. And what, in your opinion, would be the most, let's say, appropriate way to address innovative issues for Ukrainian companies?
So I think, obviously in a difficult context like yours, you need to kind of understand what are the opportunities in that particular space. Now, I'll give you an example first, a general one, and then maybe something maybe a bit more specific. But if you take Airbnb, the company that rents out rooms, when the pandemic hit, their business model overnight was not viable anymore, right? Because nobody was traveling anymore, so there was no more business model. So they had to do something else. So what they asked is, in this new environment with the pandemic, when people don't travel abroad, what kind of travel could still work? What kind of renting out rooms could still work? So what they did is they focused on renting a place long-term to go work. So they would, if you have a mountain cabin, you would rent it out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks for people to have a remote office. Because during the pandemic, people wanted to flee out of the cities. So Airbnb immediately adapted to the new environment. So that's for Airbnb. But what I want to generally say here is, when you look at the environment and your normal business model expired, how can you use what you have? What kind of opportunities are there in that particular context? Now, I think, and again, I don't know the situation when it comes to the internet and technology infrastructure today, but today it's very clear that remote working and remote companies are enormously, interesting. And even when you are in the space of creating physical things, obviously you'll have challenges with supply chain, the really complicated environment. But when it comes to more service-oriented, internet businesses, there's a huge opportunity there. So today you can work in a remote space like you could never do before, and you can sell services around the world like you never could before. My company, is remotely located around the world. I happen to have a studio and an office in Switzerland, but I have developers around the world. I have, generally my people are anywhere but in Switzerland. So I do think today is that opportunity to open up. And with the really strong technical skills you have, I think Ukrainian companies have very strong technical skills. Ask how you can take advantage of the current context today. Again, not an easy thing to do, but then you test and adapt very quickly. Because ideas don't matter. What matters is taking 5 ideas, testing and adapting them really quickly to see which one could work. Don't overthink it. Test and adapt the ideas until you find some that work.
Thank you. Another question is also based on the audience interest is, you stressed several times during your presentation the role of the CEO or the organization, and that's very important. Could it be any way not to consider this some kind of a hierarchical organizational structure behind the innovation, but rather to rely on, let's say, networking, some kind of cultural approaches? Organization without CEO is also available at the moment. And how would you comment on this, especially at this time when the organizations and yours and those you mentioned are very widely dispersed, I would say, geographically?
Yes, excellent comment, because when I say the CEO needs to spend time on innovation, we have to be very careful with what. So I'll go back to Bosch. What happened? They had 200 projects, right? And then they select 30% or so of those. And then again, they do the same thing. So you actually only have 10% that go through to the end. So these are teams that are decentralized and bottom up. So all of the ideas happen bottom up or decentralized. So it's really important to understand it's not the CEO who picks the idea. It's not the CEO who says, this is the right team, this is the wrong team. The ideas are here, and then the teams go through the process and they have to prove with evidence. We talked to 100 customers, 50 said there's a real problem. So what is the CEO's role then? When you have a CEO or a leadership team, the role is to build the ecosystem for this to actually work. So that means to put in place the culture. That means to tear down the barriers to the innovation teams. So if I'm very explicit here, innovation always happens bottom up, but it rarely happens without the top-down support. So the CEO and the leadership team's role is not to pick the ideas, is not to do the innovation, it's to create the conditions for innovation to succeed. Now, I'm going to do the last drawing here because I'll show the difference between the traditional role of the CEO and the new role of the CEO. So remember, I drew this exploit, explore, and we've seen this with Steve Ballmer, exploit, explore. Traditionally, what do CEOs focus on? They focus on exploit. But the modern CEO focuses on creating a system where this culture and this culture, the management culture, manage, and the innovation culture, they live in peace and they collaborate. So again, the CEO doesn't pick the ideas, the CEO creates the ecosystem for these two worlds to coexist. Because you can never neglect managing the existing business, and you should not. But the problem is most companies only focus on managing the existing business. The role of the modern CEO, we call it the entrepreneurial CEO, like Bracken Darrell, they focus on creating an ecosystem where these two worlds, they live together. So that's the role of the CEO. As you said, the CEO plays the role of creating the environment, but the ideas come bottom up. As you said, decentralized bottom up is very, very important innovation, but bottom up doesn't happen without top down.
Thank you. We have more and more questions from the audience, and we have less and less time. Switzerland, we have a particular question about why in Switzerland companies are very good in gaining patents and creating some technological knowledge, etc., but not that good as building the business around them. And just to additionally, a little bit to widen the perspective, not thinking of Switzerland only, you are aware that there are different ranks of the most innovative companies in the world. Yes. And actually these ranks are very, very diverse and provide very, very different results. Yes. And in particular, those who are stressed on technology development put ABB, not ABB, ABB on the second level. I checked from Switzerland, headquarters, from the second rank of the most innovative companies, but not ABB mentioned in some other rank. So how would you react on this? And you also mentioned a little bit not very, let's say, I would say controversial. You just said, quote, technology is not important, it's not the innovation.
Yes. I deliberately try to be a bit provocative, right? But so there's a misconception that sometimes people think R&D is innovation, research and development is innovation. But what research and development actually often is technology or science research, okay? And technology and science don't create value per se. In R&D, you can prove that you can build something. But at the end of the day, what we really need is what we call business R&D. That means testing value propositions for customers and testing business models. And there may or may not be a technology involved. I'll give you one of my favorite examples, and then we can get back to the rankings. If you take the Nintendo Wii, the game console, right? You can play tennis like Roger Federer, who just retired. Nintendo, when they launched the game console, the Nintendo Wii, the technology was inferior to their competitors. It was worse than the Sony PlayStation. It was worse than the Xbox at the time. So why did they succeed? Not because of the technology, because the technology was worse. The motion control was free. That was out there. It was non-patented, right? So off the shelf. So why did they succeed? Because they had a value proposition for casual gamers, an underserved market, and they had a business model that was hugely profitable because the technology was so cheap. So in this particular case, you have inferior technology, but a larger market and more profits. And what I want to show with that is something very simple. To go back to my wonderful drawings, the innovation spectrum is this big, and technology innovation is this big, right? This is R&D, but new value propositions and new business models is much bigger. So I'm not saying technology is not important, but it's never the driver of innovation. The driver is very simple. Am I creating value for customers, and am I creating value for my business? Sounds very simple, but our processes are very technology focused. So now back to rankings. I think the rankings sometimes confuse invention and innovation. Invention is all about patents. Invention is all about science. It's all about R&D. Innovation is about creating value for customers and creating value for businesses. So if we had a true ranking that just looked at value creation, it would look very different. So I think we're just not yet very comfortable with the entrepreneurial world. We're very comfortable with the technological world. But entrepreneurship is not about building something. Entrepreneurship is about creating a business that can successfully thrive. Very long answer, but I'll stop here.
No, it's incomplete also, because if we shall go into the question about value creation, we shall immediately be catched by some other, what is the value of the company and how to measure it, whatever. There is another rank of BCG about the innovative company, and Forbes actually is based on values creating for of the companies. And then you come a very interesting list of the most innovative CEOs and the most innovative companies as well, which is quite different from this. And then about value creation, you can find a greatest company in oil and gas from Saudi Arabia, and why don't we mention it as the most innovative then? Because the value they create for customers and for shareholders is really great. I don't want you to answer this particular question, actually. I have another one.
Debate we should have,
if you like, you can, but we have still some time pressure. But I have another one. You mentioned it. It was quite convincing that Steve Ballmer was less innovative than Satya Nadella. How would you know this in 2011? That those innovative approaches of Steve Ballmer will fail. Or let's say in 2007, when it was no Apple and Microsoft just bought Nokia to become the worldwide leader in this. What was wrong? Was very innovative.
So today, I'll make a bet that if you just measure, if any scientist, like I'm not an academic anymore, but if any academic in the room wants to take up this research, I could guarantee you, I'm pretty sure that if you looked at the time the CEO spends actually on innovation, where innovation lives in the org chart, and how many projects are retired compared to the projects to succeed. If you just measure this, you could today rank companies, and even in 2007, you could have compared Apple to Microsoft, and you would have seen, if we go backwards, and I've never done this, right? So thanks for the question. If I looked at the time Steve Ballmer spent on innovation, very low. If you look at the time that was actually spent on, innovation in the org chart, very low, because the business was dominated by Microsoft and Windows. So there was no space for anything different. And if you look at the success rate compared to killed projects, there was no such thing, because everything was oriented around scaling one successful business model. So remember this exploit explore? Microsoft was a hugely successful exploit engine. They were very good at scaling an existing business. But if you looked at those three metrics that I showed you, I'm pretty sure you could have already predicted that this business is not going to survive long term. So if somebody wants to pick up that research, take these three simple, silly metrics I put up and classify companies, I'm pretty sure you could have quite some predictability.
Why not you create your own ranking in innovation? It will be really very popular and could create some additional innovative possibility to bring value for your own company. You're an entrepreneur, and you could actually very well try to put in order, because I preparing to this meeting, I looked at this various ranking and was really puzzled with all these different approaches at the moment. Yes. Despite the innovation being the very popular and very positive word, and since Schumpeter in economics and Peter Drucker in management, actually nobody actually argues the company should either innovate or it will die anyway. So in this respect, everything is good. There are quite a number of questions from the audience as well about interesting idea. I believe you would agree that not all innovations are appearing inside companies. And there are, of course, a lot of knowledge and possibilities outside that could be, and this is a common practice at the moment to acquire or to somehow engage. But if you have possibility to a little bit to comment on this, it would be great. I've just united several questions in one.
Yeah. So I think you need to look at the whole arsenal of tools you have in innovation. Investing in startups is one tool. corporate venture capital, creating your own venture arm is one tool. Acquiring companies or acquiring them partially or acquiring a technology or licensing a technology is another tool. Open innovation is another tool. So I've just showed you a small window, and the one that I showed you was the corporate incubator, how they're doing it at Bosch. The principle is the same. It's from many, many projects, only few will succeed. Now, when you do investments, it's going to be the same logic. But as I mentioned, you need to understand all of the tools and find those that work best for you. Different companies will actually invest in different ways into innovation. Some will invest in startups, and some will do everything internally. They won't invest in startups. But the reality is you need to find the right mix. So you'll use all of the tools, but before, you just need to understand these tools. Very few leadership teams today understand all of the tools in innovation because it's a very young discipline. So there's a whole educational aspect that leaders need to go through to understand how innovation works today, and then use the right tools for their specific context.
Thank you very much. I have actually, we exceeded the time, but we have these technical issues and therefore allowed ourselves to work a little bit longer today. Last short question I typically ask about the personal individual, but one of our participants asked, who is your favorite basketball player? Because you mentioned you played basketball.
My favorite basketball player today, I would have to take one. I'm a big fan of new disciplines. So there's the big discipline that's emerging is 3x3 basketball. So it's Westermolteni, I must say, and that's not known to the NBA world. It's not known to European basketball, but it's an emerging discipline that's also an Olympic discipline now. Is 3 against 3. Why am I excited about that? Because I actually used to play beach volleyball when it was an emerging discipline. So Westermolteni is my favorite basketball player.
So even in basketball, you try to be innovative and speak about something which is emerging, not yet started to be a mainstream, but it will be inevitably. Dr. Osterwalder, it was a great pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you very much indeed. And on behalf of MIM Kyiv and all our participants, I'd like to thank you very much and appreciate your time and very important insight you shared with us today. With this, I'd like only to remind our participants that ReInforceUA project is on full pace, and our next discussion will be about innovation again. We shall be meeting Professor Alf Ren from University of Southern Denmark. And the subject would be again how to recognize and how to support the company in innovation process. And if you wish to support our initiative with temporarily displaced Ukrainian women, please visit our site and make donation. Thank you again. And looking forward to meeting you all on ReInforceUA project next Wednesday. Goodbye. Slava Ukraini. Have a good day.
The war in Ukraine has changed the world. And now we need to think about where this world is moving to, together. That's why MIM Business School is launching the nationwide educational project ReInforceUA, where the world's greatest minds will share their ideas and insights. And you will get their experience, change your perspective, and discover what changes should the business be ready for, before and after the victory. Every week on ReInforceUA.com.